Hey everyone, it's Mike from the SEO Pub, and this is one of the most requested topics I get. I get a lot of emails, a lot of messages, people asking me to cover different topics or shoot videos on different topics, and one of the ones I get most often is what do I put into content briefs, or how do I design content briefs to pass on to clients or to writers that I'm working with. So in this video, I'm going to walk through exactly how I build a content brief for a writer or client that I'm working with. Before I dive into that though, I want to remind you to head over to the SEOpub.com. Sign up for the email list there if you haven't already. Every single Thursday, I send out a tip like this right to your inbox. So let's go ahead and get started here with how I build a content brief. I'm going to be using a tool called Phrase. If you're not familiar with Phrase, it's very similar to, there's a lot of tools out there like this. It's very similar to Surfer SEO you may have heard of. The next choice I would use if I wasn't using Phrase would be ScaleNut is another one. There's Page Optimizer Pro. A lot of these tools do very similar things for optimizing content and building content briefs for writers. I prefer Phrase, but again, ScaleNut would be my second choice, then probably Surfer or Page Optimizer Pro. Don't get hung up on the tool though. It doesn't really matter which tool you're using so much. I want to walk through the process of what I'm looking for and how I'm building the brief and giving instructions to the writers. One of the reasons that I think I get such good content from a lot of the writers that I work with is because of the briefs that I provide them. Yeah, I think a lot of people tend to give writers basically the instructions that I see a lot of people giving to the writers are, here's the title, here are a couple keywords, and here's a brief overview of what I want, and that's it. I go into a little bit more depth than that. I do give the writer a lot of flexibility though, because I want good content, but I do give them some very specific instructions as well that I want them to follow for specific reasons. So don't get hung up on the tool. In fact, you could do most of this manually really if you wanted to, or there's free options out there that you could substitute for a few of these things. So don't think you have to use Phrase. I just use Phrase because it makes this a lot quicker. And I'm generating a lot of these briefs every single month for clients that I work with. So we're going to create a new piece of content. Well, one I did recently was about waterfall project management. Waterfall project management is a methodology of project management. And we're going to hit this Let's Go button. So what Phrase is doing now is it's pulling information about the top 20 search results. Unfortunately, when you first load it up, it's going to pull the top 20 no matter what you do. I don't like to use the top 20 though. So I will go in here and narrow it down to the top 10. And then what I like to do is I manually go through all of these to take a look at the individual pieces of content. Phrase is going to pull a lot of information, as you're going to see, from each of these pieces. I want to make sure that they are matching the search intent that I'm targeting. Every now and then you'll get something in here that doesn't quite match what you're looking for. For example, even the first one is a comparison between Agile and Waterfall project management. I may not want that one in there. I'd have to take a closer look at it. For the speed of this video though, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I would normally kind of look through these, make sure that I really want these in there. And if there's something that I really didn't want, I might deselect it. Like let's say we get rid of these two, and then I might go through and I might add something that's outside of the top 10 as well, and toss that in there. But for the most part, I want the top 10 or websites in the top 10. I might narrow it down to only 6 or 7 sites, sometimes 8 sites, but I don't want the whole top 20 because in my opinion, the site that's number 18, 19, 20 may not be doing as good of a job on site as the top ranking sites. So why would I really want to pull their information? Okay, and then Phrase has an option where you can automate the content brief. I'm going to do this again for, this just speeds things along for me, but I go through and do a lot of edits in this. The things that I do use the guidelines. People also ask, this is going to pull questions from the search result. People also ask questions. I do want the SERP, the results, the top ranking sites that I've just selected in there. I don't do topics. I do topic clusters sometimes, and we'll come back to that towards the end. Sometimes I do like to pull the headers. What this will do is it pulls some of the top headers used across the top ranking sites. I just kind of like to look at those sometimes, and I may pick one of those myself that I want to use. Same thing with questions. A lot of searches are done are people asking questions. They're looking for solutions to something, looking for an answer to something. I like to look at those questions and may trigger an idea of here's a piece of segment of the content we want to cover. Statistics also do what this tries to do, and it's not 100% accurate, is tries to pull statistics that are quoted within the article and pointing to, usually it points to some sort of source for it. Depending on the article, I may want that, I may not. So we'll just put it in here and take a look at it. And then the hyperlinks are places that these articles that we pulled are linking out to. I usually don't care about that. I usually don't include it. There's some exceptions to that. If it was something that was like really technical or something maybe that was health related that may have a lot of links leading to sources for like research papers and things to back up arguments, I might include that. For this type of content, I probably would not include that. So we'll go ahead and insert this. This pulled all the information from those top ranking results and gave us a kind of a starting point to go with here. Now, what I do, I will use some of these, not all of these. The deadline, I don't care about. That's going to be in my project management tool. We'll explain there. Project owner, I don't care about. Get rid of that. Target headings, I don't care about. We'll get rid of that. The goal, I do use this for the writers just to give them an overview. So in a case like this, I'd probably write something like something like this. This article is for anyone searching to understand what the waterfall project management methodology is about and what it is used for. Target audience. Again, this is kind of for the writer to give them an idea. This would be for obviously project managers, team managers, product owners. That's pretty good. And then another one that I like to add in here is the tone. Depending on the client I'm working with, I have some clients that some companies have a very kind of witty, fun sort of tone. Other ones are very serious, very straight to the point, very matter of fact. So I like to give the writer an idea of how I want them to write. So this one, I would probably just do, informational, something like, I'd have to think about it a little more, but informative, serious. And then target word count. I don't like to give an exact target. What I do is over here in phrase, it tells you some averages. So it's telling me that the average is 1,600 words out of the pieces of content that I pulled. But what I like to do then is kind of look at the top results. So this one has 1,600 words. Number 2 result, surprisingly, has 300 words. Third result, 1,600. Fourth result, 1,200. Fifth result, 2,600. 1,400. 3,200. So there's a big variety here, but a lot are sitting around that like 1,600 range. So I like to give writers a range. I don't like to tell them that, 1,500 words. So I like to do 1,500 to 1,800 words. And then what I like to do here, I like to add a little something here that this is not a limit. If you need to go over 1,800 words, we'll say well over 1,800 words. And usually when I'm working with writers, I'll also explain to them that the opposite is true. If they get to, if this writer got to 1,200 words, 1,300 words and felt like, hey, I've covered this topic, to get to 1,500 words, I would really have to add some fluff, then I'm fine with them stopping at 1,300 words. But so I just put that in there just to remind them that, hey, if you need to write 2,000 words, 2,200 words, do it. This is just kind of a guide. Basically what the word count is for me, it's to let the writer know, hey, if you come back to me with 700 words, I'm probably not going to be happy with that. So it's just to give them kind of a target to shoot for. Next thing I do then is I will actually put in here. Let me get this back to black. So I'll put the actual title tag. And this isn't so much for the writer, but it's going to be for the client when they get a hold of it. I'll include title tag, meta description, slug, and then I'll also include places that the article should link to. So if I'm, if this is part of a topic cluster and I want it to link to a specific article or pair of articles, whatever articles, I will put the instructions right in here that it needs to link to, and I'll put the URLs, and then I'll put the anchor as well. So I give them those instructions. I'm not going to go through for this video and write out title tags and meta descriptions, a slug, all that. But normally, if I'm passing this on to a client or a writer, that stuff's going to be in there. Again, the meta stuff is not really for the writer. It's more for the client, and it's just so that we have that information somewhere. Next thing I do is create a page format. And if it's a writer that I feel really comfortable with, that I've worked with for a while, they know kind of what I expect, I know what they're like working with them, I'll actually make it recommended page format rather than page format. And basically what I tell them is you have some freedom with this, where if you want to change the order of these headings, I'm okay with that. If you want to reword the headings a little bit, I'm okay with that. If it's a brand new writer I'm working with, I would probably just give them, explain to them, these are the headings I want you to use, and this is exactly what you're going to do. So first thing is introduction. And I explained to them that this is, basically just you're going to write an introduction to the article. Then I want them to use headings. So the first H2 might be what is waterfall project management? Now, let me back up a minute. I've worked in this space for a while, so I'm pretty familiar with this stuff. So I'm going through a little quicker than I normally would. What I do at this point is I start looking at, in phrase here, it pulls all the headers for you of the top ranking pages that I had selected. So I can see the structure here. You can see like they have these as H1s, H2, H3. I can hit view all sections. I can see how they're structuring their pages here. Normally I would kind of look through this. I'd look through the content itself, the articles, to get an idea of what we want to do instead, and what we maybe want to base this off of. Again, I've worked in this space for a while now, so I'm pretty familiar with the topic. So I'm going to go a little faster than I probably normally would. But this would be that would be what I would do, is I'd be looking at how are other people covering this? What are they writing about? What are the top headings that they're using? So, for waterfall project management, for an article like this, I probably also would do then the benefits of waterfall project management. Then I'd probably do disadvantages. I'd probably do best practices. And then maybe something like practical use cases of waterfall. Now, what I also do is I'll go through. So this one's just H2 headings, but a lot of times I'll include H3 headings, maybe even H4 headings in there that I want covered. So in this case, I'm under, what is project management waterfall? I might, or waterfall project management, excuse me. I might have them do something like the phases of waterfall. And then under that, I might go a step farther and actually list out what I want them to cover. So um, I don't have the phases off the top of my head, but phase 1, phase 2, and so on. Now, what phrase does is they include this people also ask section. And I use this one of two ways. It depends on the topic. Either I will just leave it like this, and what I do is I'll give instructions to the writer. I will say, try to include these questions with answers in the content. And I'll curate this list, so I'll go through and decide which ones I want to keep and which ones I don't want them, worrying about. But so I would go through this and here's 5 stages of waterfall project management methodology. What are the steps in waterfall project management? Those are kind of the same thing, so I would probably get rid of one of those. Projects are suitable for waterfall model that would fit into one of these. When would you use waterfall project management? What is a waterfall project model with example? That I would probably get rid of. Where can it be used? Difference between agile and waterfall. That I'd probably cover as a article on its own. Something to do with Microsoft, I don't care. Suitable for big projects, is it suitable for complex projects? This has to do with agile project management. That's not what we're covering. I would go through these and decide which ones I want to keep. And sometimes I'll have like 5 to 7, sometimes more. Now, the other way that I'll use these is sometimes, and in this case is probably one of those times, instead of including these in the content itself, I'll actually rename this section. And what I'll do is I'll tell the writer to create an FAQ section with these questions and appropriate answers. And one thing I explain to writers when I'm working with them or to clients with their content team is when I give them an FAQ section to include, I want the answers to be generally 1 paragraph. We're talking, like 4 or 5 sentences at the most. Sometimes 2 paragraphs is okay, but I want them to be, kind of short. And the idea behind these is we're trying to capture those people also ask questions in the SERPs. So I would actually just tell them to go through and create an FAQ section at the end for a topic like this. I think is appropriate. So the next section, then, these are all those top ranking pages that we had included at the beginning. And what I tell the writer is these are top ranking search results. You can use as a reference or for ideas. Do not link to any of these. Basically, what I tell the writer is you're free to look at these. You can get ideas from these. If you get a little bit of writer's block, hey, take a look at a couple of these articles to get some ideas of what you want to cover. Use them as a reference, but do not link to them. And then the next section we have is topic clusters. What these are entities. These are the, if you're familiar with entities in SEO, these are the entities that Phrase has pulled from the content that appear frequently within the search results. Topic clusters, I have a conversation with the writers before we start working together. I explain these so they understand how important they are. Before I really know a writer, I will keep it like this. And what I just do is I give them the instruction, try to use as many of these phrases in the content as you can. You may use them more than once. So pretty simple. I'll tell them, and I go through again and I curate these. So if there's anything that I feel doesn't belong or that I don't want them to worry about, I'll delete them. Like here, times, I don't really think that actually pretty much that whole section I don't really care about. Architectural, I don't care about that. Ceremonial activities, don't care about that. So again, I'll go through and I'll kind of curate this list and give it to them. And I just tell them, use these, try to use as many of these phrases as you can. You can use them more than once. And that's all the instruction I give them. I find that if a lot of writers, if I give them more in-depth instruction than that, it affects the content that I get back. The content will be, a lot of the stuff will be stuffed in and it just doesn't read as well. I'll take the time to, if I decide that, hey, we need project managers in this piece of content 2 more times, I'll go through then and add it once I get it back from them. Now, what I do though, if I have a writer that I know or a writing team that I know is really good, they're on top of their game, I've worked with them for a while, and the content they write is awesome. Instead of doing this, what I do is I'll have a conversation with them and I will teach them kind of a little bit about entities and what they are. And the instruction I'll give them is to make sure these terms are included in the content. You may go over the recommended usages, but try to hit the minimum. And then what I do is, instead of doing it this way, delete all these. What I, over here in, if you go under optimize on phrase and look at clusters, it'll group these entities together into clusters. And what I do is make my own decision on these and pick the ones that I want. So this is telling me that projects on average is showing up 5 times in these pieces of content, that the top ranking pages that we pulled, and it shows up in 9 out of the 10. So 9 out of the actually, did we have 10? Or sorry, 9 out of 9. So that tells me it's pretty important. So I'll put in projects, and what I will tell them is to try to hit that 5 to 6 times. So I actually give them a range that I want them to try to use that. Agile, project management, the next one. And what you can actually do in phrase is, if we just click here, you can see it copies it right over into here. And so this is saying that on average, these sites are using it twice. So I'll say 2 to 3 times. Again, I'm okay if they go over, but I want them to try to hit that minimum. 4 of them are using waterfall project management, project managers. I'm going to include those both are waterfall project management methodology. Those seem pretty important to me. Now it's saying that on average they're using it once. I'll just do 1 to 2 times. Project managers, same thing. And I'll go through, so that's the first cluster. I'll go through each of these clusters and decide, okay, process is used on 8 of the sites. I want to make sure that we include that. And if you actually click on it, it'll show you. So this is the first article. It shows you where and how these sites are using the term, if you want to see that. But process, I'm going to copy that over, using it 4 times. I'm going to say 4 to 5 times. And by the way, the reason that, so this is saying 1 out of 4. So it's saying that I have it 1 out of 4 times in the content right now. It's just reading the brief. If you were actually writing the content in here, if I go here, you see it shows up 0 out of 4. This is where the content is stored, but I'm just writing the brief. So it's just pulling that information from the brief. So just ignore those numbers. And I literally will go through each of these clusters then, and I will build out a list of entities that I want them to use with instructions on how often I want them using these. And sometimes I'll make some judgments too that, task is something that probably should show up. It's saying on average it's showing up twice, but on a topic like this, it really probably should show up a little bit more than that. So I'm going to say 3 to 4 times. And again, I go through all of these and make a big list here. I may have a list of 20, 25, 30 of these entities that I want them to use with recommended usages. All right, so moving along, we'll go back to the research side here. The next step, so the next section was that we copied over was the headers. And again, this is headers that a lot of these sites are using. And this one really is not giving us much. Sometimes I'll see a header, I'll be like, oh, that's a good topic we should cover. Or it's a really catchy way of doing a header where we have a header that covers that topic, but the way they wrote their header, I like a lot better. I'm going to modify it a little bit or use it. So sometimes you'll catch some things in there. This list here is just crap. So we're going to get rid of that. These are questions that these top search results are using. Some of them are headers. Some of them are questions within the content. It's questions that it's seeing fairly frequently. And I'll take a look through these just to make sure that there's something, if I see a question that we didn't cover that I think is worthwhile, I'll use these questions and I'll go back up and I'll edit the page format, put them in the headers, or I'll sometimes make a note specifically that, hey, in this section, make sure you cover blah, blah, blah. And I'll give them some instructions there to tell them that, I want this question covered in that section and it's really important. But then I don't leave that question section in for when I give this over to the writer. As I mentioned at the beginning, this will try to pull statistics that it finds within the content on the top ranking sites that sometimes may be useful. So this one might be useful. It mentions that although most companies use some combination of project management styles, a 2017 report from Liquid Planner showed that 25.5% of manufacturing companies currently use waterfall. So that's very relevant to this article. The writer may find it useful to include. I'll probably give them that. 20 to 40% of the time spent on requirements and design, that's useless. That's useless. This is very similar to that one. So what I would do here, so just tell them, hey, if you find these useful, feel free to include them in the content. If you want to source other statistics, feel free to. Actually, I'll include that in here. And there we go. Now, the other thing that I do is, this is based on waterfall project management. I'll also do a couple related searches. So I might do a search of what is waterfall project management. I might do a search of, we saw that agile versus waterfall pop up a couple places. I might do that search. I might do specific search around the benefits. I might do a specific search around the disadvantages of waterfall. And what I do then is I come over to this optimize section, and I'll take a look at if there's any entities that pop up that didn't pop up in this one, or that maybe popped up at different frequencies that I may want to include. I'll build out that entity list using those. I may also see some headers in the search results that I like, or some topics that I like that we didn't include here that I think are beneficial to just kind of expand the content a little bit. So I've put a lot of this stuff into a template that I copy and paste over and fill in to create the brief. But for this example, I kind of did everything by hand just to show you how I do it and the steps I go through in doing this before I hand it over to a writer. One cool thing about Phrase is I can hit the share button then, and I can either share the full document, which means that they get access to the content section, and as they're writing, they can see these entities getting knocked out. They can also see the research and all this stuff that I have access to here. Or you can share with them just the brief, and it gives them access to that. You don't have to pay for additional users to give them access to either one of these. It doesn't matter. So that's one thing that I really like about Phrase. I believe Surf for SEO, if I remember correctly, does the same thing, and so does ScaleNut. I'm sure other tools do too. But so again, that's how I go through walking through building a brief for writers. If you have any questions, pop them down in the comments below. That's it for this video. Again, a reminder, head over to the SEOpub.com. Make sure you sign up for the email list there. I'll see everyone in the next one.